Who let this woman in here? Security, please escort her out. This is a closed meeting for executives only. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. The pristine conference room of Meridian Technologies suddenly felt suffocating. My hands trembled as I clutched my folder of sustainability proposals. But I was invited to present my— "Look at her," sneered Richard Davenport, VP of Operations, gesturing at my simple dress and worn shoes. "Does she look like she belongs in a boardroom discussing a $100 million project? I don't think so." Laughter rippled through the room as two security guards approached. My cheeks burned with humiliation as they gripped my arms and began pulling me toward the exit. "Wait," I protested. "There's been a mistake." "The mistake," Richard said loudly, "was letting the cleaning lady think she could play with the big boys. Baby, stick to mopping floors, honey." Just as they reached the door, it swung open. A tall figure stepped in, his expression darkening as he took in the scene. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "What exactly is happening here?" asked James Whitmore, CEO of Meridian Technologies. "James," Richard stammered, "we were just removing this unauthorized person." James's eyes met mine, and I saw the flash of fury behind his calm exterior. "Gentlemen," he said quietly, "I'd like you to meet Elena Whitmore, my wife. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories about unexpected twists and powerful comeuppance, make sure to click that subscribe button. This is the best way for you to support our work. Thank you very much, and let's continue." 6 months earlier, I was Elena Reyes, an environmental scientist working for a small nonprofit. I specialized in sustainable manufacturing processes. Not exactly the type of career that put you in the spotlight or made you wealthy. But I was passionate about my work, believing that even small changes could make significant differences in corporate environmental impact. My tiny office was cluttered with research papers, plants, and half-empty coffee cups when my colleague burst through the door, waving a newspaper. "Elena, Meridian Technologies is hosting a sustainability summit next month. This is our chance." Meridian was one of the largest tech manufacturers in the country, known for innovation but also for their substantial carbon footprint. For years, our organization had tried to get their attention with proposals for greener practices, but we've never managed to get past their gatekeepers. "They're accepting proposals from environmental consultants," my colleague continued. "The winning approach gets implemented and funded." I looked at the newspaper and felt my heart race. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. A chance to make a real difference on a massive scale. I threw myself into research, developing a comprehensive plan that could reduce Meridian's emissions by 35% while actually increasing production efficiency. The night before the submission deadline, I was still fine-tuning my proposal at a small coffee shop downtown. I'd been there for hours, surrounded by papers and my ancient laptop. "They're closing in 5 minutes, a deep voice said. I looked up to see a man in a well-tailored suit gesturing to the barista, who was clearly ready to go home. I hadn't even noticed the time. "I'm so sorry," I said, frantically gathering my papers. "Just lost track of time." The man smiled, and something about his kind eyes made me pause. "Important work? Hopefully life-changing," I replied, showing him my proposal cover. "For the planet, anyway. Environmental science? That's impressive." We ended up talking as we walked out, and I found myself explaining my passion for sustainable manufacturing. He listened attentively, asking surprisingly insightful questions. "I'm James," he said finally, extending his hand. "Would you like to continue this discussion over dinner?" Under normal circumstances, I might have declined, but there was something genuine about his interest in my work that intrigued me. That dinner turned into breakfast the next morning, where I confessed I still needed to submit my proposal for Meridian Technologies' sustainability initiative. "I have a good feeling about your chances," James said with a mysterious smile. What I didn't know then was that James had deliberately withheld his last name and his position. I assumed he worked in some mid-level corporate role based on his understanding of business operations. We continued to see each other, and our connection deepened rapidly. We talked about everything except his specific work, a topic he skillfully deflected with vague references to the tech industry. 3 months later, we were married in a simple ceremony. It was a whirlwind romance that surprised everyone, especially myself. James suggested I continue my environmental work independently rather than joining Meridian right away when my proposal was selected as a finalist. "I'd prefer if you made it on your own merits," he'd said. "Your work deserves to be recognized for its brilliance, not because of any connections." I thought he was being sweetly supportive of my independence. I didn't realize he was protecting both of us from corporate politics. The day of the final presentation arrived. I was scheduled to present to Meridian's executive board, a rare opportunity for someone from a small nonprofit. James had kissed me goodbye that morning with unusual intensity. "Whatever happens today," he said cryptically, "remember that real change often comes from unexpected places." I arrived at Meridian's imposing headquarters clutching my presentation materials. The receptionist looked confused when I gave my name, checking her list multiple times before reluctantly providing me with a visitor badge. "The Wellington Conference Room, 20th floor," she said dubiously, "though I'm not sure you're on the right list." When I stepped off the elevator, a sleek assistant approached me immediately. "Are you lost?" she asked, eyeing my simple dress and practical shoes. I'd chosen professional attire, but nothing designer or flashy. Clothes suited to someone who spent more time in research labs than boardrooms. "I'm Elena Reyes, here for the sustainability presentation." Her eyebrows rose. "The Whitmore meeting? I don't see your name here." "It's possible they have me under Elena Reyes Whitmore," I said, still getting used to my new hyphenated surname. "I recently married." She reluctantly directed me to the conference room, where about 15 executives in expensive suits were gathered. The atmosphere was one of barely concealed impatience. Several checked their watches as I set up my materials. "We need to get started," announced Richard Davenport, a man with silver hair and an expression of perpetual disdain. "Where is James?" "He's the one who insisted on this presentation." "Let's begin without him," suggested another executive. "We all have actual revenue-generating matters to attend to after this environmental diversion." I cleared my throat, trying to ignore the dismissive glances. "Good morning. I'm Elena Reyes Whitmore, and I'm here to present a sustainability initiative that could transform Meridian's manufacturing processes while significantly reducing costs." That's when Richard interrupted with his cutting remark about the cleaning lady, leading to the humiliating moment when security was called to remove me. The silence after James identified me as his wife was deafening. Richard's face drained of color, while others suddenly found the conference table fascinating. "I believe," James continued calmly, "that you were about to hear a presentation from one of the country's leading experts in sustainable manufacturing processes. A proposal, I might add, that was selected by our Innovation Committee in a blind review as the most promising approach to reducing our environmental impact while improving our bottom line." He turned to me with a gentle smile. "Elena, please continue." I apologize for the interruption. For a moment I considered walking out. The humiliation still burned, and part of me wanted nothing more than to escape those judging eyes. But something stronger took hold, the realization that this was exactly why my work mattered. Environmental science was still fighting for a seat at the table in corporate America, still dismissed by those who saw profit and planet as opposing forces. "Actually," I said, finding my voice, "before I continue, I'd like to address what just happened." James nodded, taking a seat. The rest of the room remained frozen. "What you just demonstrated," I continued, looking directly at Richard, "is exactly the problem with corporate sustainability efforts. You judged me based on appearance rather than substance. You assumed that because I don't look like you, I couldn't possibly have value to offer." I opened my presentation folder. Environmental science isn't about image. It's about facts, innovation, and the future of your business. So the question is, are you ready to listen now? Or would you prefer to continue making assumptions that cost you both talent and opportunity? The room remained silent, but I saw several executives straighten in their chairs, their attention now fully engaged. "Kind," I said, "let's begin again." Over the next hour, I presented my comprehensive plan for retooling Meridian's manufacturing processes. I explained how specific changes could reduce their carbon footprint while simultaneously cutting production costs by 22%. I showed them case studies of smaller implementations I'd overseen and projected figures that demonstrated the potential market advantage of positioning themselves as industry leaders in sustainable practices. By the end, even Richard was taking notes. The questions that followed were substantive and thoughtful. What had begun as a humiliating disaster had transformed into one of the most engaged corporate presentations I'd ever given. When it concluded, James stood. "I'll let you all discuss this proposal on its merits. Elena and I will step out to give you privacy for your deliberations." In the hallway, James finally let his CEO mask slip. "I am so sorry," he whispered, pulling me into an embrace. "I should have been here earlier. I had no idea they would treat you that way." "Why didn't you tell them I was your wife?" asked. "Why all the secrecy? I wanted your work to stand on its own," he explained. "If they'd known from the beginning, they might have approved your proposal just to curry favor with me, not because they believed in it. Or worse, they might have rejected it out of fear I was showing nepotism." I understood his reasoning, but the experience had shown us both something important about Meridian's culture. "Your company has a problem, James," I said quietly. "What happened to me today? That doesn't happen in healthy corporate environments." He nodded grimly. "I know, and it's time for some significant changes." An hour later, the board unanimously approved my proposal and allocated a budget even larger than I'd requested for implementation. Richard Davenport approached me afterward, extending his hand. "Mrs. Whitmore, I owe you an apology," he said stiffly. "Dr. Reyes Whitmore," I corrected him. "And yes, you do. But I'm more interested in your commitment to this project than in your personal feelings about me." He nodded, chastened. "The proposal is sound, revolutionary even. I give you my word that operations will support it fully." The following Monday, James called an all-hands meeting for Meridian's 5,000 employees. He introduced me not as his wife, but as the new Chief Sustainability Officer, explaining that my background and expertise made me uniquely qualified to lead this initiative. "Meridian is making changes," he announced. "Starting with our culture, excellence comes in all forms, and we will become a company that recognizes brilliance regardless of its packaging." Over the next year, we transformed not just Meridian's manufacturing processes, but its entire approach to talent and innovation. We implemented blind review processes for all proposals and job applications. We created mentorship programs for employees from underrepresented backgrounds, and we opened pathways for experts from non-traditional corporate backgrounds to contribute their knowledge. Richard Davenport eventually became one of my strongest allies, though it took time and many difficult conversations. He later admitted that the boardroom incident had forced him to confront biases he hadn't even recognized in himself. "I've been in this industry for 30 years, he told me once, and I realized I've been hearing the same voices the entire time. Think of all the innovation we've missed." The sustainability initiative exceeded all projections, reducing emissions by 42% and cutting costs by nearly 30%. Meridian became an industry leader in green manufacturing, attracting both consumers and talent who prioritized environmental responsibility. 2 years after that humiliating boardroom moment, I stood on a stage accepting an industry award for environmental innovation. Looking out at the audience, I saw faces of all kinds, young and old, from diverse backgrounds and disciplines. "The greatest untapped resource in business isn't some new technology or material," I said in my acceptance speech. "It's the diverse perspectives we've been excluding from the conversation. Innovation doesn't wear a particular suit or speak with a particular accent. Sometimes, it walks into your boardroom when you least expect it." After the ceremony, James found me in the crowd. "Proud doesn't begin to cover it," he said, eyes shining. "You've changed this entire industry." "We changed it," I corrected him. "That day in the boardroom could have ended very differently if you hadn't backed me up." He shook his head. "I just opened the door. You're the one who walked through it and transformed everything." As we left the venue, a young woman approached me timidly. "Dr. Reyes Whitmore, I'm starting in Meridian's environmental engineering department next month. Your story, It gave me courage to pursue this field even when people told me I should choose something more suitable for someone like me. I smiled, remembering how it felt to be dismissed and underestimated. The most powerful thing you can do is prove them wrong, not with anger, but with excellence they can't ignore. Later that night, James and I walked along the waterfront near our home. The city lights reflected on the water, a reminder of how human innovation and natural beauty could coexist when we made thoughtful choices. You know what I realized? I said suddenly. That day in the boardroom. It was awful, but I'm almost grateful it happened that way. Grateful. James looked surprised. If they'd welcomed me with open arms, we might have implemented the sustainability program and nothing more. But because they didn't, we were forced to confront something much deeper. We didn't just change how Meridian manufactures products. We changed who gets to have a voice in those decisions. James nodded slowly. The environmental impact is measurable in reduced carbon emissions. But the human impact is immeasurable, I finished. And that might be the more important change in the long run. The incident that began with humiliation ultimately sparked a transformation that rippled throughout the industry. Other companies began implementing similar programs, both for sustainability and inclusivity. The narrative about who belonged in corporate leadership started to shift. And it all began with that mortifying moment when a room full of executives discovered that the woman they'd mocked and dismissed as the cleaning lady was actually the CEO's wife. But more importantly, was exactly the expert they needed all along. Sometimes the most powerful changes begin in our moments of greatest vulnerability. And sometimes, being underestimated is the perfect position from which to exceed everyone's expectations. As for Richard Davenport, he retired last year, but not before establishing a scholarship fund for women in environmental sciences. He named it, with my permission, the Cleaning Lady Scholarship for Innovation. A reminder that brilliance often comes from unexpected places, if only we have the wisdom to recognize it.